What's going on, everybody? This is Dave over at Green Hat Kiteboarding. I got John from Cabrinha. We're going to go over some of the new boards that are coming out 2026. Some of them already out, some of them on their way. First, I personally wanted to start with the prone board that they have made. This is the 2024 bump. This is the 5-foot version. Since John, a shaper yourself?
Part-time shaper.
Give yourself some credit.
Yeah, part-time shaper.
Okay. He came up with some new concepts for the 2026 bump, and I just kind of wanted to go over them real quick as far as what designs changed, what he felt needed to be maybe improved from the 2024, and take it away, Nat.
Yeah, it's funny, a lot of people really loved this board in particular, the 5.0, and it's funny, the first one I made was for a good buddy of mine just down the road, Greg, who needed a prone board, and he was more of an average size guy, and that board I made from like 3.5, 4 years ago, and every time I borrowed it, I said, I really love that board, but since the last couple of years have gone by, we've learned some things, we've improved some things, and the new bump I think is definitely a solid improvement. The first thing that most people will probably notice going from, if they're already on the old one or they're looking at the old one like you, the 5.0 is, we still have a 5.0. We have a 5.0 and a 5.4 here. There's also a 4.5, a smaller one, but we don't have that here right now. But 5.0 to 5.0, we've gone significantly narrower, right? That's 5.0 by 20.
Yeah.
So super user-friendly size. Probably pretty rippable for a good rider, but definitely not a very, very high performance board at 20 inches wide. A guy your size, your skill level will definitely benefit from going a little narrower, 18.75.
Yeah.
And so I mean that width is definitely enough width to be friendly, but you're gonna get a lot more performance out of it. It's gonna feel like it paddles a little quicker. It's gonna touch rail a little bit less. I felt like if you were somebody that would fit into that board in that size, you would benefit from a little more length. So something like the 5.4 bump with a little more volume, a little more length is gonna paddle significantly better than the 5.0 did. And I think at that size, you don't need that full width. So I think if you were somebody that the 5.0 was fitting good for, and you're on the beginner end, I would really recommend sizing up to the 5.4. And if you were somebody that really liked the 5.0 but wanted a little more performance, the new 5.0 is going to be just that.
Yeah.
Shape-wise, other than the dimensional changes, we have flattened out the rocker a little bit, but in the right places. So it's a little bit more of a continuous rocker, this board. So although it looks a lot flatter, it's actually not that much flatter. It just hides it a little better. The old bump had a little bit more of a flat spot and more of an aggressive nose rocker. I felt like this touched down and paddled a bit quicker. Introduced a little tiny bit of a double in the nose, just a little bit of extra lift with the lower entry rocker. It still lifts out of the water enough for me. When you would nosedive that board, it'd come out pretty nice, but a little bit draggy on the takeoffs because it had a decent amount of nose rocker. So we flattened this out, but added that double in to get the lift you need to keep the nose out of the water. Went to a squash tail, and the reason I went to the squash tail is the smaller performance sizes of the bump got really narrow. And I liked that for a lot of people, but if you want to ride really short boards like the smallest new bump, the 4.5, we actually went to a wider squash tail. So it goes the other direction now, where the smallest bumps have more of a squash tail, and as you go bigger, so this is the 5.0, you can see the tail width here, and then when you size up to the 5.4, you can see the tail gets a little narrower and longer.
Yeah.
So a little bit easier of a waterline for paddling without adding too much swing weight into the tail. And just a squash tail is just a little bit easier to keep that cool, consistent look about it versus a round tail. When you go from kind of a pinny tail to a big round one, the big rounds get a little ugly in my opinion. So yeah. I just cosmetically like that a little bit better.
No, for sure. And they also balance better.
Yep, they stand up a lot better. They stand up a lot better. Other changes, we did add inserts this year, but we did keep the weight down by only putting one set of inserts front and back. We felt like most people are around the same stance width, so we didn't really see that to be too big of an issue. But you do have our patented curved inserts, which are both stronger, and it's nice because then you really get to rotate them keeping the same width to get your ideal foot position.
Okay. I think the weight's really good. So that was one of the things with the 2024. I personally fell in love with this board. The only thing is I had to use a little bit of an offset stance. That could have also been my foil, but I really feel that this board feels like it's going to be more in the pocket. Like you're going to find your sweet spot. You're going to stay there. It looks like it's going to pump really well in a very, very easy spot, but also you won't have to move around too much to initiate a turn, get out of a turn, all of that stuff. Where with this one, you had to pump with your front foot a little further up. And then when you went to go and turn, I almost had to put my feet kind of in this area a little bit. Not a terrible thing. I actually really loved how you can just take off on waves of consequence with this one because of the rocker.
Yep.
You never had to worry about digging, but at the same time, on normal day-to-day waves, I would have liked more paddle power.
Yep.
And it kind of seems like that's what you guys went for.
That's from my experience. That's what I felt is I gained every bit of the paddle power I wanted by going a little longer, a little narrower, a little bit more subtle in the rocker lines. Ultimately, I think just a better overall board. We've also upgraded the construction considerably. This is the new Pro Carbon construction, so it is going to be a stiffer board than the Bump. All the boards do come with a really nice back.
It's a pretty basic box, but still just to give someone a heads up, like a good starter position for the mast.
Yeah, everyone's foils are a little bit different when it comes to mast placement. We pretty much set ours to be relatively in the middle.
Okay.
Our foils, I would say, are middle back than some other brands. I wouldn't say we're perfectly middle average, but it's within, half an inch or so of probably the average. Okay. We go out of our way to make sure we grab the foil on the market that we feel like is the most far forward, and then the foil on the market that are the most far back, and make sure we test them with the boards. Cool. And that's kind of where we set the boxes. And so I have not found a foil that doesn't work really good for this amount of box. And we didn't want to go crazy long, spend more money, add more weight unnecessarily. So this length was sort of bigger than the smallest out there, but it's certainly not the longest track. But again, I feel like there's diminishing returns there.
Yeah.
The other thing about those really long boxes is they don't really set well with any kind of rocker, right? They're mostly coming flat, so you're kind of shaping around them, which becomes a problem. So some of the really crazy long boxes, I'm not a huge fan of. Again, I think it's just unnecessary. If you're not going to use the territory, then why have it? So 30, 38, 46 in literage, 4.5, 5.0, 5.4 in length. So the 4.5 at 30 liters, this is definitely a performance prone board. Also ideal size for the behind the boat guys, in my opinion. Also great for kite foiling, that size. It's a little big, but it still works totally fine. I think any experienced rider under 175 pounds could probably make that 4.5 30 liter work. But again, that's a more performance size. The 5.0, man, fits a big range of people. Yeah. I think you could learn on this if you're a smaller person. And I'd say up to, I'm 190 pounds now, and this is really my go-to size for normal conditions. The 5.4, this is more of like a mid-length for a guy our size, where you're smaller than me, but like in this range, you probably wouldn't put a 120-pound person to paddle a 5.4 at 46 liters. But for let's call it a 150 to a 180-pound guy, the 4.6 is definitely like more of a mid-length size. Yeah. But also a great beginner board. I put some really early on prone foilers on that, the 5.4, 46 liters, and it's amazing to see how effortlessly they get up on foil and how early they get up on foil, which, as we know, when you're learning to prone foil, man, getting up early is so critical before the wave breaks, before all the chop, because engaging that foil in flat water, a lot easier than in a peaky wave.
I can't wait to try both of them. I don't know which one I'm gonna like. I recently have been actually riding your Swift 50 liter, which is 17.5, which is insane. It paddles so good, but I would like a little bit more real estate for my feet. I would like a little bit more real estate for the pop-up, and I think this 5.4 is gonna hit that ticket so well. But at the same time, if I want to get shreddy, 5 foot.
Yeah, I think the 5.4 for people is going to be a potential I hate using Quiver Killer because it's just so used, but a bit of a Quiver Killer board for
Call it
people.
Deserted Island.
Desert Island for a lot of people. And the 5.0 I think is definitely, like this is a prone board. You're probably not going to do too much else with a 5.0 than prone, but a really good size for doing just that.
And someone with the right skill set can probably parawing or use this as a sinker board.
Yeah, if you're a high level lighter person, absolutely. But yeah, definitely want to be on the lighter side for that.
For sure. And then today I got to ride the Swift. This is an 86 liter board.
Yep.
It didn't feel it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
So there's a lot that's gone into this board. Actually, quick backstory, because I think this is really important. The original Swift we designed 5 years ago, and it was actually for wing foil racing. And the idea was, hey, we need these 80 liter boards, 70, 80 liter boards, but way narrower for the wing foil racers. We made one just for wing foil racing. We never thought, hey, everyone at that point was on 26, 28 inch wide boards. And here we are.
Great.
Yeah, which are not great. And we made a 510 by 20. 5 years ago we made this board. Like early on wing foiling, when we knew that racing was gonna be a thing, but we didn't know what it looked like. And after we made it, we said, oh my gosh, this isn't that hard to ride, but can you ride in so much lighter wind or a smaller wing? And we knew this was gonna be a thing. We're on our 4th generation Swift now. Some things have changed, but not too much important refinements. So we have gone a little longer for the length. So this is the 86 liter. Last year's 80 some liter board was a 510. This year's 86 liter board is a 6.0. Okay. So it's gone a little bit bigger. We've shifted more volume forward. Okay. We've done that for 2 reasons. One, because this is a little bit of a crossover board this year. It does absolutely work for parawinging pretty well. It's not as efficient as some of the true dedicated parawing boards or the Downwind boards that people are using for parawinging. But if you're looking to get into parawinging, but you know you're liking wing foiling, but you just can't budget 2 or 3 boards in your quiver, this is it. This is a bit of a one board for 2 sports. I use it for winging, I use it for parawinging. The extra length that you were commenting on that you didn't really feel like it was an 86 6.0 board. That's because we've spent a lot of time looking at volume distribution, not just volume distribution for nose to tail, but relative to the foil placement, relative to where the swing weight of the board lies as well. And we really put proportions of the board in with all that in mind, because if you've got too much weight or too much width forward or back, it just, the board feels bigger because it's not balanced right. If you make a board light, in the total weight of the board light and the swing weight of the board light, it feels dramatically smaller. We got the weight down about, for most of these boards, they're about 1.5 pounds lighter.
From 2025 to 2026.
Yep.
Okay.
We kept on the Swift a 1 insert pattern to also keep the weight way down. Yes, it kind of limits your adjustability, but most people don't use the inserts on this board, but if you do, you do have one really good option with our curved insert pattern, and again, the weight stays down. And I also just think it looks a lot nicer than having like 50 inserts all over the board.
Yeah.
We updated the rocker this year as well, so I'd say the rocker is one of those, most important things that's a little bit hidden to the eye, but it's a much more continuous rocker, more tail rocker in the board, which works really well with the additional added volume in the front. It just gives a nice, really clean, easy release. Some boards you have to really pivot and pop out of the water. To me, honestly, when you get on a board like this, it just, if you do less work and you just let the board glide out of the water, it does that really effortlessly. Yeah. So when people try this board, honestly, just sit back and relax. I feel like this board, more than anything we've made before, just absolutely glides out of the water.
Totally. I mean, I definitely, again, 86 liter for me is getting close to an SUP board. The fact that I was able to get up in lighter wind, I mean, today was a little lighter, but the fact that I was able to get up, I felt confident. And again, once on foil and turning into a wave, it felt super lively. I have the 65 liter,
yep.
18.25. But I really liked it, but I did want just a little bit more width.
Yep.
And I think with everything going into this whole parawing world, width is key. It's different than winging.
You need a little more stability, and I felt like we got that in a couple different ways this year because we really improved the rocker line and we went a little bit longer. The boards for their relative size, so the 80 liter 510 last year was also almost 3/4 of an inch thicker under your feet.
Okay.
So you're gonna feel more connected, more stable on this year's Swift. So you can get away with a little bit wider. It's still a narrow board relative to a lot of things, but it's just a smidge wider, but more stable. You're closer to the foil, and you have just a little bit more length with a faster rocker line. It makes a pretty big difference year to year. Subtle improvements, but honestly, yeah, a great package. I'm glad you tried to size up because I think that even though for you, I would have recommended the 510, the size down to 74 liter as more of an all-around board for you. I think for people getting into it, learning, or kind of nervous about going from winging to pair-winging, sizing up is not a bad thing. This board does not mind being sized up. Again, I'm 190 pounds. This would be my go-to size. I know a lot of people have different ways to talk about volume recommendations. I think I love your weight in kilograms minus 10% if you're intermediate advanced, minus 20% if you're more of a pro, or getting your weight in kilograms if you're sort of like novice to intermediate. If you're a beginner, you're going to need to go more than your weight in kilograms.
Yeah. I personally think it really depends on back injuries.
the more you have in a year,
Yeah, the longer you skateboarded, the higher the liters you should probably go, which is why the 86 felt great.
Good. Yeah, well, I've been saying at the beach, I have 3 kids now, so I've been adding 5 liters for each kid. Yeah. That helps a lot.
Yeah.
That seems to be the appropriate ratio. If you're wondering, 5 liters per child.
I don't have a ton of experience with downwind SUPs. I feel like, John, this is your world, so just have at it.
Well, the Quest is already out, but I really thought it was an important board to compare with the other ones and to talk about where it fits in and why. The Quest really is a downwind dedicated board, downwind stand-up paddling. It absolutely does work as an ultra light wind para-winging or wing foiling board even, but it's not going to be the easiest board for those things because they're much narrower relative to their length. But if you're looking for a board that really gets you gliding through the water in light winds, that's what this board has been designed to do. So the Quest is a real full displacement hull, very rounded nose, very curved in, pulled in tail. Although the middle of the board has this is a boxy rail. Like if you just took a photo of this board from the section, you wouldn't think it's a downwind board. Now, is that the most efficient? No, but if you look at race stand-up paddleboards, all of them are really square in the middle. Why? Because of stability. If we kept this level of displacement shape throughout the entire board, we'd have to add width for the stability, which is a much more decrease in performance than a little bit of boxiness in the middle, in our opinion. So I think if you're looking for your first downwind stand-up board, or you're looking for, hey, ultimate light wind performance, but in an easier to ride package than some of the other things on the market, I feel like we've put a lot of emphasis for that customer in this board. That's really the DNA for this one.
Sure. I will add, downwind SUP is such a different animal compared to SUP.
Yep.
Big difference. And that was one of the shocking things that I figured out how to SUP. No problem. But the second that I was in open ocean, I couldn't get the thing to move fast enough to actually catch a bump. So you want your stability, but you also want it to move quickly through the water, which is narrowness. But when you take away narrowness, you lose stability.
Yep.
So this rail design, I also used to prone paddle those things, those 18-foot bark boards. This kind of looks like it.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I took a lot of influence from those, also from outrigger canoes.
Yeah.
One of the other things that people don't talk about when it comes to stability is rocker. So, the example that a lot of people use in other worlds when they talk about rocker and stability is a log in the water. Right, if you take a perfectly straight no rocker log in the water, it spins really easy. If you now bend that log, it won't spin so easy. Sure. So this board actually we have more tail rocker in this board than nose rocker.
Okay.
And one of the reasons is stability. Yep. So if I took the same board and just decreased that rocker line, it would become significantly less stable. I think, especially in this board, the weight is really noticeable. I mean, this is definitely, for its price point, one of the lightest boards on the market for its price range. You can get lighter, no doubt, but you're going to be paying 30-40% more for the board. So I feel like without breaking the bank, getting a really light, really high quality board, really strong dent resistant board with a custom bag, I'm pretty excited about what we offer.
This is something that a lot of people don't ask, but I'm going to. Do you guys put any angle where the foil boxes are?
Good question. So it's actually a really tough question, right? Yeah. Because the angle of the foil box is just relative to the angle of where your feet go. Sure. So if I design the board in the software where the foil boxes have 0 angle, but I would put 1 degree in where your foot stance is, that's the same thing as if I designed the board perfectly flat where your feet go. Correct. And put board angle. So the answer is I think the way I like to talk about that is the feet and the tracks the exact same angle? Sure. The answer is no. They actually, for every board, we make a subtle adjustment based on what we think is really ideal for that. Okay. I can't give up that formula.
That's okay.
But yeah, every board has a little bit of a difference, but most boards do have a small positive angle there.
Okay. Yeah. Small positive nose rocker.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
The nose of the board, your front foot will sit ever so slightly higher than your back foot if your board was perfectly flat relative to the foil tracks.
Okay.
Some people swear that you have to do it straight, and you can. I don't think that works for every board. Okay. I think that works for a lot of boards, not every board. Okay. I think a lot of people do kind of ask me, hey, can I just get a Swift or a Quest for everything, right? Can I wing, downwind, parawing, a Quest, or Swift? And if I know I want to do all these sports, which do you go with? It's a tough question. There's really no right answer. At a guy your weight, 160 pounds-ish? 140 pounds. Yeah. So you can, if you wanted to downwind, parawing, and wing, and you knew you were going to be light winds, a 7.0 Quest, our smallest Quest at 95 liters, could be a bit of a quiver killer, again, I hate using that word, for you, because you could do everything with it. Now, is that going to be an ideal board for you in 35 knots on a parawing? Probably not. It's going to be a bit overgunned. But again, I think you can find one board in our range that suits you, but you have to kind of make sure you're within a certain condition range at that point. You're not going to find one board that does all these sports and goes through a huge range of conditions. So it's not an easy question, but it's something that I think people need to talk about a lot, because the reality is not everyone's going to be buying 2 or 3 different boards. They're going to try to find something that fits all of them. If you're looking for light wind performance, even though the Quest is a downwind board, it might be a consideration depending on your skill level. If you're looking for a really universal board though, and it needs to be a bigger range, I do think the Swift is probably the best board in Cabrinha's collection to kind of do dabble into a little bit everything. But maybe, if you're more focused on one sport or another, then you'll have to start looking at the other boards in our range.
Sure. I don't have any experience with this, but the Swift might not be the best board for doing aerial maneuvers.
Correct.
You guys have so the Swift, the Bump, and the Quest are for your carvy, surfy, snowboard turns.
Yep.
Where there's other boards in your lineup that are just built for boosting airs.
Yep.
And doing backflips and all the other interesting stuff that people are doing.
Absolutely. A great summary would be the Code is really a dedicated wing foiling board and all those freestyle tricks in between. The Swift absolutely is a great wing foiling board, but is definitely not going to be ideal for those kind of tricks, but work better in light winds and get you into parawinging. The Quest, downwinding, light wind parawinging, and maybe even light wind winging. Sure. And the Bump, more of the prone, surf, and foil assist devices that board's going to work great for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the icons are... It's just a little bit of fun in the boards. I love the sunrise and the geese on the Quest. The Swift, we've got the paper airplane. Yeah, each board has a little bit of character and personality, and I like to think our group has got a lot of that going on, so it seems like the appropriate thing to add.
Do you have a particular artist that is making all this stuff?
Yeah, our new graphic designer, she's fantastic. All of the kites, all of the new, everything that looks good has basically been her doing. Yeah, she's been our full-time girl and awesome.
Cool.
Abby, good job, Abby.
Good job, Abby.
We do have the T-nut trains available. They don't come with the boards, unfortunately, but you can buy them. They are set at the exact distance for our foils. We will be coming out with one in the future that's adjustable, so if you really love it, you can add it to, you can get it for someone else's. It does have a set screw, so if you really want to keep that track position the same, you just set that in. And what's also nice about it is they don't really come out of the board on their own, so you don't really have to worry about them. You just bend it a little bit to take it out, but can it come out on its own? Yes, but it typically doesn't. I mean, I know some guys have the crazy big washer nuts. Other people have all these contraptions to keep their nuts there. For me, I don't mind it sliding around. I kind of know where my mask go. I usually put a mark on the board, and it's, if you just have to line up one and the other one's perfect. So yeah. For me, it just really, this is like pretty much the fastest, least techie, crazy idea that that you can come up with to make your assembly quick.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, feel free to comment, give this video a like, and John, any last words from my people?
Shop local. Green Hat's a great choice. Definitely make sure you support your local retailer because they're what keep the sport alive. So thanks guys so much.